Interpretive Phenomenological Analysis. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But what exactly is it? Is it as complicated as it sounds? Could you use it in your research? Keep watching because that's what we're covering in this video. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley and I help PhD students get out of their own way and finish their doctorates. There's a lot of off-putting terminology in the world of qualitative research, like phenomenological. These words, these terms, they can sound quite big and scary and intimidating, but actually they are nowhere near as complicated as some people make them out to be. So let's get into interpretive phenomenological analysis and find out what that's all about. What is interpretive phenomenological analysis, or IPA as it's known? Now, at its heart, IPA is about understanding how people make sense of their personal experiences. It's a qualitative research method which has two roots. Firstly, in phenomenology, which is the study of lived experiences, and secondly, hermeneutics, which is the art and the science of interpretation. The goal is to get as close as possible to the participant's world. It's to understand their perspective whilst acknowledging your role as a researcher in interpreting that. Imagine you're interviewing someone who's just run their first marathon. You're not interested in the event itself, the crowd, the finish line, the water stations. You're interested in how that person felt, what it meant to them, and how they made sense of that experience of running their first marathon in the wider context of their life. That's the kind of angle you're taking if you're doing IPA. Now, let's break those foundations down a little bit more. As I said, IPA draws quite heavily on two philosophical traditions, phenomenology and hermeneutics. Let's take a look at each one. Think of phenomenology as a deep dive into the essence of people's experiences. Pioneers like Husserl focused on peeling back the layers of assumptions to understand things as they really are. For example, instead of thinking about marathons as just races, a phenomenological approach would ask, what does running a marathon feel like to someone? How do they experience it? What is their unique marathon journey? Later, Heidegger emphasised that we are always in a context. Our experiences don't just stand alone, they're influenced by things like our culture, our history, our relationships with other people. So we can't just study an individual in a vacuum. We've got to look at how they're rooted in their social world and how that social world shapes how they think and feel about things. Hermeneutics is all about interpretation. In IPA, it's about interpreting your participants' stories to uncover the deeper meanings within them. So the researcher is trying to make sense of how the participant is making sense of their world. It's like peeling an onion back layer by layer, only to discover that there's yet another layer underneath. Why choose IPA? IPA is particularly powerful when you want to do one of these things. Explore how people make sense of particular events or experiences, like living with a chronic illness or grief, or adapting to a new stage of life. Understanding subjective perspectives, getting to grips with what really matters most to people. When you're working with small numbers of participants, to get some really detailed, nuanced insights into their experiences. Before we get on to the next point, I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you thinking about using IPA in your research? If so, let me know what you're studying. What are you stuck on? What do you need help with? And if you've done IPA before, or you're in the process of doing IPA and you've got some tips or you've got some advice that you can share with people who are thinking about it or who might go on to do it, please drop them in the comments too. Now let's look at some key features of IPA. Firstly, it takes an ideographic approach. Ideographic, another fancy word there, what does it mean? Essentially, it's about understanding individual things in depth, rather than looking for general patterns or laws. It's about individual cases or events or phenomenon. It's all about the detail. It is zooming right in. IPA starts small and specific. So researchers begin by analysing individual cases in a lot of depth, and they need to do that before they can identify any patterns across the different participants. And this bottom-up approach that's taken ensures that everybody's experience gets the attention it deserves. Imagine interviewing 3 first-time marathon runners. Each story will be unique. One person might focus on overcoming their self-doubt. Another one might focus on the sense of community that develops around a marathon event. And another person might be looking at a deeply personal milestone. IPA allows individuals the space to tell their detailed stories before it zooms out to identify patterns or themes. Interpretation and sense making. In IPA, your participants aren't just passive subjects of your research, they are active sense makers. Your job as the researcher is to understand how they interpret their world. And to do so, you need to interpret their interpretations. Yeah, you need to interpret how they interpret. For instance, if somebody was to say, crossing that marathon finish line felt like being reborn, what does that mean to them? How does it connect to their life story? And that's the beauty of IPA, the focus on experience. IPA really does allow you to get into the depth and the richness and the complexity of the human experience. This includes emotions and thoughts and bodily sensations and how all of those things come together. So it's not just about what happens, it's about how that felt and what that meant. In the marathon example, a participant might describe feeling absolutely exhausted but euphoric, with the physical pain of running blending with the emotional experience of having achieved a goal. Their description could also reveal deeper meanings, such as overcoming self-doubt or gaining a sense of belonging within the running community. And these intertwined elements that you find during an IPA study highlight how people's experiences are multi-layered and deeply personal and incredibly complex. How to conduct an IPA study. If you're ready to roll up your sleeves, here is a simplified guide to getting started with IPA. Step 1, define your research question. IPA thrives on open-ended questions about experience. For example, what is it like to live with chronic pain? How do first-time marathon runners make sense of their achievement? Step 2, recruit a small, homogeneous sample. IPA typically works really well with small samples. Think 6 to 10 participants. Homogeneity matters because you're exploring a shared experience, like new first-time mothers and how they adapt to having a baby in their lives. Or teachers making the switch from classroom learning to online learning. Step 3, collect data. Semi-structured interviews are your best friend if you're conducting an IPA study. They allow for really rich, in-depth conversations, while giving participants the freedom to share their stories in their own way. You might also use things like diaries or written reflections to complement your data. Step 4, analyse the data. IPA is an iterative multi-stage process. Read and reread. Immerse yourself in that data. Take some initial notes, highlighting anything interesting. Key phrases, metaphors, or emotional tones. Identify themes. Start grouping your notes into themes that capture the essence of that participant's experience. Look for patterns. Once you've analysed individual cases, look for similarities and differences across the participants. And remember, IPA isn't just about description, it's about interpretation. So keep asking yourself, what is the deeper meaning here? What is really going on? Let's have a look at an example. Imagine you're studying how people cope with the diagnosis of ADHD. One participant might describe the experience like this. The diagnosis was the missing piece of the puzzle. Everything made sense afterwards. On the surface, this statement reflects a sense of relief, a sense of clarity. The participant sees that diagnosis as a key that unlocks their understanding of things they've experienced in their lives. On a deeper level, though, it could signify some kind of reorganisation going on within their identity. Perhaps they've struggled with self-criticism or confusion about why they find particular things difficult. And now they're beginning to reconstruct their self-concept in light of this new knowledge that they've got about themselves. Phrases like everything started to make sense suggest that that's a pivotal moment, that is a milestone. And it's worth exploring how that sense of coherence impacts on their self-esteem, their relationships, their future outlook. We'd also need to look at the cultural or contextual influences. So how does this participant's broader environment shape the meaning making that goes on around their diagnosis? For instance, do they feel supported? Do they feel stigmatised? Do they feel misunderstood? Do they feel misrepresented? What metaphors do they use? What emotions underpin their words? And it's in revealing these layers, in peeling back these layers, where IPA really shines. A few tips for success. Embrace reflexivity. Be aware of your own biases and assumptions. Reflect on how these might shape your interpretations. Have you experienced what your participants have experienced? Have you not experienced it? How might that have an impact? Are you carrying around any biases or any assumptions about the particular thing you're studying? Stay close to the data. Let your participants' voices guide your analysis. Pay really close attention to what they're saying, to what they're communicating, and use direct quotes to illustrate your findings. And perhaps most importantly, be patient. IPA is not a quick method. It's not a quick win. It takes time. You're probably going to revisit your data multiple times. You're not going to go in and interpret it and come out and be completely done. You will be going in, coming out, taking a break, thinking about it, going back, seeing it in a different light. It's something that is going to unfold over time. So don't rush yourself. Don't pressurize yourself to do IPA really quickly, because that's just going to backfire. So let it breathe. Give yourself time. Popping up on your screen right now is another video you might find helpful if you're thinking about IPA for your study. It's my deep dive video into phenomenology, breaking it all down, figuring out what it's about. So if that sounds good, go and check it out. I'll see you in there.